welcome to Getting to Know You. We have a person here to introduce to you. Now, in planning for this program, I mentioned to people, guess what? We're welcoming Betsy Ashton here to Stonebridge. And so a couple of responses were, oh, is she a new resident? I said, no, she's not. She said, did she give a program here? And I said, well, yes, in a way she did. And then I said, you know the pictures on the wall? And then immediately, oh, really? We're going to meet her? So wonderful. So we're really delighted to have you here.
Glad to be here.
So the portraits that you've done really have gotten a wonderful response. You know, people will say, I feel like I know these people, or I feel like I haven't seen humanity that way in a portrait. And some of our artists are extremely appreciative of how hard it is to do a good portrait.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
So anyway, my first question is, when did you know that you could be an artist, or when did you want to be an artist? I mean, this doesn't happen overnight.
No, no. And everyone should know that I'm the age of the rest of you. I'll be 80 next year, so I'm no kid. But when I was a kid, when I was old enough to hold a pencil, is the answer to that.
Really?
Because I would, when I'd get bored in school, I would be sketching the teacher. And at some point, the teacher,
probably good practice.
well, the teacher would say, Betsy, what are you doing? Bring that up here. And then the teacher would say, oh, may I keep that? At which point I figured I had a future.
Right, right.
Something.
Yeah.
That was sort of it.
So, as an adult though, did you become an artist?
Yes, but it was, I've been a back and forth between things. I was never sure that there was a way to have an art career. I didn't have any guidance. There was nobody in the family that was an artist. And while I liked doing art, I didn't know how to do it. And mind you, I came of age at the time that the fine art world went all bonkers over, oh, you know, Cubism and and abstract expressionism and throw balloons of paint at the wall, and that's what it is. And
or Judy Chicago with her dishes.
It just wasn't me. And while I did art, I took art classes in college, but I also I was in the School of International Service for a couple of years first, until I realized that I needed to have major graduate degrees in order to do anything in that. And so I thought, well, if I switch to an art degree, I'm a girl, I could always be an interior designer. You know, there weren't many avenues for women. And the other thing that I always was sort of on stage. I was always the student council person and all that kind of thing, and a debater. And so I was interested in politics and public affairs, and I kept going back and forth. And what really changed my life was the women's movement. Came along right at the right time for me. And they started opening doors in media, particularly. And I wound up, I was working as an artist. I was getting a master's of fine arts in painting. But I also taught art in high school for 3 years at a really good art school, area down outside of Washington, D.C. I went to Washington and stayed for 20 years in the Washington area. But while I was there, I wound up doing cartoons on the side for Associated Councils of the Arts had a national convention in the Mayflower Hotel. And two things happened there that changed my life. One was that the FCC commissioner named Nicholas Johnson gave a talk. My pay, by the way, was to get to go to the conference. So I went and listened to him. He had just written a book called How to Talk Back to Your Television Set. The thesis of which was, if you don't like what's on television, don't just sit home and complain about it. Come up with a better idea. These are the public airwaves. You have a right to talk to people. And oh, by the way, here are the program directors that you should give your idea to. And of course, there were 5 television stations in Washington, and they had even the addresses. And I thought, I'd been doing all of these wonderful projects in school for my kids, and the parents loved them, but they weren't going to come in. And Julia Child had just started teaching French cooking on television. So I put together an idea of teaching art on television. I called the 5 news directors, not news program directors. 2 of them said, come on in, we'll give you a chance to audition. And one of them said, you're good. We'll put you on our daytime panorama program. So for $50 a week, I started teaching art on television. But something else happened at that conference. The last day, the President of the United States comes to speak to all these art donors. And of course, what happens, and it was President Nixon, okay? And I'm hanging out in the back as he walks in, followed by the Washington Press Corps. All men, smoking like chimneys, right? Bored out of their minds because there's no way you're going to get any news out of the president talking to a group of art donors, right? So they're waiting for, wars and things like that. So they were hanging out. The president goes in to talk to the auditorium. They're hanging out in the back. And I was in the back. And some of these guys came up and they started talking to me. I was a cute blonde in those days. And they started baiting me. They were having fun, baiting me with things about what the women's movement was doing. And I wasn't really involved in it, but I was reading up on it and had been a debater. They didn't know that. And I just threw it back at them. And the next thing you know, one of them says, Betsy, I work for Mutual Radio, and there is a producer there who's looking for a woman to do reports on the emerging women's movement. And he said, you'd be great at it. And he wrote on a piece of paper a phone number, and I called the guy, and we talked on the phone, and he said, I want you to audition. I want a 3.5-minute piece, has to be exactly that, of the issues of what the women are talking about. And I said, sure, I'll do it. So I went out, and I did the research, ripped out all the newspapers and things about all the talks and who the people, Eddie Pogrebin and Gloria Steinem and all these people. And I did 3 reports, went in to the microphone in the booth, and I recorded them. And I only remember one of them was about the concept of using Ms. instead of addressing women by their marital status. And the other one was about equal pay for equal work. Shocking concept. I can't remember what the third one was. And when I was finished, the guy came in and opened the door. He was smiling. He said, A, you can write, B, you've got a voice, and C, you've got the job. And so for $33.50 a week, I started doing reports on the emerging women's movement.
I see a story here because I think that we would not be seeing these portraits hanging at Stonebridge if you had not been entrepreneurial, but trained to be a good artist and to write, because I hope people will go back and look again or look for the first time and see how this all fits together. You had to have a sense of what was going on today, solving a problem about our attitude, right?
Yeah.
And that you had to be able to present these faces that have confidence written all over them, right?
They do, but that, I didn't.
And here they are, and because you had a sense of what was sort of appropriate for the times.
It seemed appropriate. I mean, I got inspired to do this when the backmouthing started, and I just had never heard anything like that. And I lived in New York City, and I just said, wait a minute, every step I take, I'm next to an immigrant. And I said, this is not the reality of the people that I see. And I just wanted to go around and to meet people. I said I wanted different countries and cultures and religions and backgrounds and ages and sexes. But the key was they had to have been somebody who'd come recently. I mean, it could have been within the last 10 years or so, but 20 years in a couple cases. But people who came here. And I wanted, there had to be some refugees. There had to be someone who had actually come across the Rio Grande at night, because that was the big story that was inflaming everybody. And I said, I'm going to ask them all, why did you come? People don't leave their homes and their families and all their friends and where they can speak the language and uproot themselves unless there's a reason. And so then the thing was, what was it like getting here? And then, what was your welcome like? And after that, well, what have you done since? And that's where I started, and I had no trouble finding, well, that's not true. There were a lot of people that I knew, like the fella that made the bread and, and you know, was ran the place where I got cappuccino every morning. And then the others were the gal that, you know, drew blood out of me when I went to my doctor's office. That's where I started. But beyond that, you know, people who are undocumented aren't advertising.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time finding, there were quite a few that didn't want any part of having their portraits painting and telling their stories. So
the stories are as interesting as the portraits in sort of meshing your understanding.
They are to me, yes.
So I just wanted to let Snowbridge people know that for some people, standing in front of the reading about them is difficult. But the other thing I think, and we'll get back to that because I know you brought something.
To solve that problem.
Right. The other thing is that I'm fascinated that, again, your entrepreneurial spirit has clicked in. and as I was reading the panels, I see that you created a foundation called Fractured Atlas.
Well, I didn't create it.
Well,
I was looking for a way to raise money because it's expensive to, I'm not selling
or promoting it or whatever.
I think I think I need to really put together a book and sell them online or something because people have told me they love this and want to keep, you know, have copies, so it's really good fine
So what
prints.
did you bring for us?
Well, this is something that was put together by the head of the life enrichment at Meadow Lakes. And for the same reason, you know, the show was designed to be in galleries and we never thought of the problem. People in wheelchairs and we can't get the print down low enough.
Right.
So what they did, Liz Schaus-Guzzo did such a wonderful job. She said, let me put the stories in a book that we can leave in the library. And I said, great idea. I mean, it's not put together like I would do an art book on this, but it's got big print.
It's very useful.
It's useful. It's the big print, and you've got the picture of the person, a little, so you know who it is. And this is the story, so that you can sit down and read it, you know, at your leisure. And just keep it in the library because that's what they wanted in Meadow Lakes. But keep it in your library here, so that it'll make life easier for those of you who can't see way up there.
I think the other thing that's happened is that we found, as we sort of were comparing notes about this and our own lives, that we started talking about how most of us started through some kind of immigration.
Sure.
That we knew about and we wanted to know more about, which I think was just fascinating.
You know, when I give talks, and I do it a lot, about this, the first thing I always say is, okay, would all of the pure-blooded Apaches raise your hand? Lenny Lenape, Sioux, you know, and all of a sudden everybody's laughing because we're all immigrants.
Right.
And my people came over to Philadelphia, at least on my father's side. Well, they were on a boat with William Penn, so they've been here a long time. I just wish they bought more land or started a bank or something. They didn't pass anything down to me. But my mother's people, my mother was a Hart, and John Hart also signed the Declaration. So we're still immigrants. We came from somewhere else because there were troubles there.
Right. And I love it when people compare notes and find out that they were really related. I mean, they had this relationship because both of their parents came from Eastern Europe and had a hard time getting here and so on. So that it is all part of us. It's all a story. So
it is.
I think looking at your portraits makes you think about your own life as well as the lives that you portray.
Or makes you think about the stories that your parents or grandparents told you.
Yes.
Of what their lives were like.
And what they didn't tell you too.
Right.
How hard it was. I mean, you don't gloss that over in what you're doing. Well, we know that you're portraits are going to be up for another several weeks. And so I hope people will take a second look if they already had studied. I mean, I feel like sort of studying them. And then others who might have found it difficult to get engaged would be able to take the book out of the library and explore it.
Or just keep
further.
it there. We at Meadow Lakes, we kept it on, there's a big sofa and a big coffee table so that they could read it there and not, you know, take it out and keep it away from others. So that works.
Right. Well, I think that we will love having these people here. We'll now sort of think of them as part of our community. Because,
I'm so glad.
Because they are really real. And in effect, we're getting to know them, just like we got to know you, and hope that because we are in neighboring Spring Point facilities.
Right.
You live at.
You're not that far away.
Yeah, in Meadow Lakes.
I live in Meadow Lakes now.
Sort of across on the other side of Route 1.
Oh yeah, we're on the wrong side of the tracks. I understand if you've got all the Princeton people here and they say, oh, well, not on that side of Route 1, we wouldn't do that. But anyway, I know that. I was married to Princeton for a long time.
Were you?
I've been to many parades, yep.
Okay.
Marched in a few when the class allowed the wives to march with them.
Okay.
They didn't do that for a long time.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah, now women whose husbands were in the class are very often the organizers of late reunions.
Absolutely.
So,
There were a lot of great wives in those days.
There's a lot of fun in this region, but I think what you brought to us gives us, people are really special about this, a new perspective on what our culture is today. And our economy. I mean, it gets to be really very influential. So.
Well, the economic panel is very interesting. It blew me away when I was getting this information from this nonpartisan group.
Yeah.
You know, the immigrants, one of the reasons why the immigrants start so many businesses is because they're not automatically welcomed into the existing ones.
Yeah.
But they're very entrepreneurial. If you've had to struggle to survive, you are entrepreneurial.
Right.
And one of the reasons why, it seems to me, why a lot of these people go on to do very great things is they had to.
Yeah.
They had to do it, and they're not lazy. Their kids they teach their children also to study. This is a wonderful opportunity, and da-da-da-da. Some of the children of the people I know who've been around here a long time have a sense of entitlement and feel a little lazy. And everybody knows this story.
Right.
You know, my former husband used to say that he's passed on, but you know, shirt sleeve to shirt sleeves in 3 generations.
Yeah.
The entrepreneurial's there, then there's too much money made, and then the kids say,
even we at Stonebridge and Meadow Lakes know that we come from sacrifice and determination, perseverance, and appreciate that. So I think you've given us a new light. We wish you much success with this.
Thank you.
And you can say, very proud to say that Stonebridge, you know.
I'm delighted to have it
And
here.
so we're proud that you came to visit with us and give us a chance to get to know you.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right.
My pleasure.
So there you have it. Now you know who Betsy Ashton is. She's not a new resident. She's the person who brought us the wonderful portraits.
But I'm a neighbor. I'm not far away.
Okay. So thank you so much.
Thank you.